accountability, and implementation of new technologies in this whole process. Transparency. These are the main values that the action plans should be in accord with this, should be compliant with these principles. Transparency. I have mentioned here several priorities, how you have to express this, like the financial transparency, how the public means are being expanded, what platforms, where is to be placed the responsibility. Next is the availability of information, which is not less important and is one of the first ones. Could be examples of, say, open access of budgetary restatement portals. As you see, innovation and implementation of new technologies and provision in this process is connected with other values, meaning how, like for example, creating internet sites, how can they provide transparency of the budget expenses? This is the main and important part of public participation, which expresses that the state takes responsibility of working with the civic society, meaning create a team, a working group, and discuss point after point the whole action plan, take into account all the needs, and then only confirm the action plan. In the first place, this is the responsibility of the state, of the government per se. Very often they mix. Sometimes they think that this is the responsibility of civic society, which is not the case. Armenia has already developed 2 action plans, one in from 2012 to 2014, the other one from 14-16, and now we are in the process of implementation of the 3rd action plan from 16 to 18. How the process was going on in Armenia? In January 2012, on 11, the participation of Armenia was confirmed, and in January the coordinator was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. A working group was created from representatives of civic society and state officials, and the principle was as follows. Mainly, the ministry sent letters to representatives of active non-governmental organizations suggesting participation in these processes. Around 9 representatives of social society were invited, and that many from state agencies, and they started to develop this action plan. The action plan was corroborated in April, and that was the first one that was presented at Brazil OTP conference. I was presenting the approaches on behalf of the civic society and the whole process of how Armenia has developed that action plan, how we have come to that principles. That was the first experience, of course, and there were a lot of shortcomings. And the international initiative as such, and the governments of the other countries had also started newly, and there were a lot of things nobody knew, and there were questions whether the actions devoted to the creation of e-governance could be, say, an action targeted towards transparency of OTP. In Armenia, for example, in our first action, we had included the guillotine program, which was not considered as an initiative directed towards the open government function. And also the licensing, car drivers licensing, and Armenia's action plan, not only of Action Armenia, but in particular the Armenia's action plan was criticized. That is why when we were developing the second action plan, we specifically paid attention, and I was very enthusiastic, our organization was really very enthusiastic about this process. We decided to involve more actively the civic society, and we involved non-governmental organizations in all the process, in all the stages of the development. We sent, organized information meetings to describe what are the functions, like what kind of functions could be suggested, and around 50 suggestions were made by the civic society. A new steering committee was created in the government. We started to sieve out the not applicable ideas, and besides, we have also IRM Monitoring Institute that is hiring separate experts who are seriously studying and making conclusions, and also are directing certain countries, speaking of advantages, shortcomings, and make highlights. We took into account all the suggestions and we developed the second action plan. I can say that from the 3 action plans, the second one was indeed very successful with its content and with its actions directed towards the open government. OGP.am is the official site which, with our initiative of the civic society, was created. And this is considered to be Armenian chapter official site, where you can see in the action plan page all the 3 action plans are placed here, or plans are here, or 3 of them. And point by point you can read what has the government taken as responsibility to implement. There is also this, there are also the pages of monitoring as of the civic society, as of the independent monitoring entity. If we were to take in general Armenia and compare with other governments, has received positive reaction. But in our opinion, and in the result of our monitorings, the initiatives are still weak and have very small seeds directed towards open governance, because indeed in Armenia we have these problems, especially from this point of view of freedom of information, online platforms. And you might be interested in the first page, in the first plan, we had this initiative of the government to unify the official sites. The government had decided to do it. For a long period, the Ministry of Transport and Communication was discussing this initiative, what are to be these official sites and what kind of information they should contain. And there were a lot of suggestions. The government adopted, but that decision was shelved and dusted, because if we were to open this decision and if we were to see what information our official sites give, we will see that there are a lot of shortcomings. Same was about the clauses, principles and demands of the information freedom in respect of the information provided on the pages of the sites, which are called to be open and transparent and disseminate widely information, but unfortunately today these shortcomings are too many. I have to say that the government of the Republic of Armenia has already become full-fledged member, and we are paying 25,000 euros per year in order to participate in this initiative. And we are also owners, in a sense, of this project. And we say, if we pay that much, would you please then do the initiatives that we have written on the paper. And in the second action plan, there were things that stayed unaccomplished, like, for example, the Ministry of Local Self-Government. They had such an initiative to provide the online broadcasting of the council meetings of 100-something communities, and also providing the internet pages or internet sites of these councils and bring them into conformity with all the corresponding decisions and laws, which is also not accomplished. Another initiative was for the training courses for responsibles of information freedom, which also was not accomplished. We are now in the course of the implementation of the third action plan. By the way, we worked rather long on developing these third action plans, and the government tried to be more collaborating with the UNDP, involving regions, because people don't know in Yerevan what's this, and people in Marses don't know even more. What can they do, and how can they include their initiatives in this program? And there were several meetings, and we created a platform of open suggestions, so as they would suggest this or that in order to direct it towards provision of transparency and openness. More than 70 suggestions were made. Again, the steering committee met and we started working on it. My personal assessment is that the current action plan is rather weak because, firstly, there are several problems. Firstly, donors are not interested with this issue at all, and the civic society is passive. When donor starts giving some programs or grants to OGPs, the NGOs start to be more active, start to participate, come to meetings, discuss, and so on. When it freezes, and now for a year the situation is so, which I can't say, for example, about our neighboring country, Georgia, about Moldova, Ukraine. OGP is rather active and donors are rather interested in financing programs for this initiative. For example, Georgia this year, from the very first summit, their minister was there, the prime ministers were there with very high representation. They always come to the summits, they always express their will, they come present what they have done very positively. Unfortunately, Armenia, I can't say, maybe we don't have the desire, or maybe we don't have the capacity, or maybe we don't have the awareness of the necessity of this, and we don't sell ourselves, in a sense. And Georgia became the leader this time. Every country takes the general coordination. In December, Georgia will do the next summit in Tbilisi. That is an achievement for them. I want to say I have participated in all these summits together with representatives of our government. They always say that we also do it, we also have this in our program, but task number one is to introduce Armenia at international summits in the framework of this initiative, because we do really do good things. And if we were to compare with other countries, Armenia does as well. Like, for example, e-draft AM. If you know, this is an electronic platform where the drafts of the laws are being presented, and anybody can make suggestions in the drafting of this law, and all the suggestions are published there, placed there, and also the comment or response of the government. Each agency has its own page, and these things are presented there. it was one of the second action initiatives, and that was a good initiative. Nevertheless, nobody spoke about this in international platforms. Only in the second action plan, the International Mining Organization, EITI, joining readiness, which is one of the functions of the OGP. And in London, when the conference took place, the Prime Minister of Great Britain specifically mentioned about this initiative of Armenia, and it was welcome that finally the government of the Republic of Armenia has expressed wish and the desire and readiness to digitize the whole geological fund, and now geofund.am has been created, and these are initiatives that deserve a kind of promotion. But in the first place, we need to do something, publicity, whatever, and at least people to this extent were, how many were you well aware of this initiative? But I thought that this audience should have heard about this. We ourselves, civic society, tried to publicize. Yes, Mr. Saryan, you have to say something? You have to ask a question? Okay, and we shall talk later. We also did some TV programs through Yerkir Media TV company about each of the initiatives, and I'm calling all representatives of civic society and anybody. It is open as for experts of any sphere that are familiar with these principles or have certain suggestions towards these principles. Involvement in the steering committee process is open. That is to say, those NGOs that have involved in the sphere, they have simply written a letter to the head of the government staff, introduced their activity and expressed their wish to be involved, and nobody has been rejected till today. We do not have action plan or organigram or whatever is աշխատակարգ, and the coordinator from the government is now the fourth one, and every time when they change the coordinator, we start the process with the government again and again and again. We have now a new coordinator. We haven't met yet. There has been no meeting yet. It is Bahaji Lagan, the deputy head of the government office. Questions? Very interesting initiative. Simply, we were not aware of it at all. Unfortunately, being an NGO, we didn't know about it, but we are ready to cooperate. I felt that the government doesn't pay much attention to this process. And then why do we participate and pay money in the first place? 11, 12, 13, there was some movement, there was some initiative, and little by little this interest started to decrease, especially after the change of the government in 2016. Like, we made a big conference with the presence of Prime Minister. Now it's like kind of left to inertia. But under the pressure of the civic society, I think that Armenia should participate. We have participated on in respect of the document about the sites developed by the Ministry of Transportation and Communication. We tried to ease up as much as possible, because if you do big, say, demands on how this state site is to be designed, we could vanish in bureaucratic swamps. Well, our impact was that they managed to somehow lighten it up. I indicated that the decision was made, and it's not the criticizing of the decision. There have been discussions, and the action plan included in that format in which the ministry has come and now it is acting. Unfortunately, even the government's initiative is this. Government says, we have initiated the adoption of the decision, not the implementation of the decision. That's the problem. When it says, adopt this decision, they say, oh, we have already done it. Okay, but further, how the sites are going to be in compliance with this decision, the majority does not comply, and they don't do the demands of this decision, as in many, many cases. That is to say, the feedback in many cases, this disinterest of government is like in this, that they say, this is written, we have done it, and don't ask anything more from us, and that's it. And that's not only our case. 75 countries, governments almost everywhere are very much similar, and all NGOs are raising these issues, the productivity, the further results, and the role of the civic or society is coming forward and raising the role of the and keeping it in the focus. Why didn't they accept guillotine? That was a very good one. From 100,000 acts, they made 30,000 acts. Well, I can't speak much about details. It is in the report of the independent study. The main argument was that it is more for the improvement of the activity of the government and not promoting the kind of open and participatory action of the society. No, government. So government, in a sense, is making more productive its activity, but it doesn't have more impact on the society. In the monitoring part, there is more detailed analysis. I heard you spoke about the not compliance with the recommendations that you have done monitoring. Such a rhetoric question, actually. Let's say, however, by the pre-election programs, when they give promises and then they come to the power, do you monitor these election campaigns? By cheating, people come to power and then do nothing. Do you do monitoring so as to remind them that you have cheated, you have deceived? Well, my question has sounded a little bit political, but this sphere is political sphere if you deal with the government. Well, everybody has its function and his mission, each NGO. The function of our NGO is dealing with these pre-election campaigns to the extent that it is connected with the transparency and freedom of information. In that respect, our organization is doing its monitoring. Like, for example, we have blacklists, as you said, of cheaters, but the whole say political pre-election activity, we don't monitor it. Our direction, the direction of our organization is that recently we also made some encouraging and reproaching award. Every year we do it. I think that everybody in their own sphere are to be able to do whatever they are qualified to do. And is there any impact? Yes. In the result of our rewards or our blacklists, we are passing not as much to the open society, but to the transparent government. Like, for example, in the presence of, if we give, say, a rusty lock or rusty lock to, say, program implementation office for not providing the information, immediately the Prime Minister's decree was like we give them rusty locks. That is the award for non-compliance. Do you follow those NGOs that are receiving money from budget or from some places, and then they wash the money, and these NGOs have a one-day life like butterflies? Do you cooperate with this kind of we don't, it's not that we our center was one of the first ones that raised these issues on which NGOs have received these grants 2 or 4 years ago, when the first survey we did. It was 5 years ago. I have 2 questions. My first question is, you said that the third action plan was not that nice. I'd like to know whether this is a personal opinion or this is a result of a study. No, this can't be personal opinion, because I'm representing here as a member of the steering committee and representative of civic society. In the result of discussions, yes, indeed, all of us, representatives of the say civic society, we came to the conclusion that we could have involved their more strong initiatives, and it didn't happen because of different reasons. From one side, the government decided that the timing is not clear, that this society is not ready to take this initiative. I'd say there were 70 and more suggestions, but in the result, we had the smallest action plan, 8 initiatives only. Like, for example, no initiative at all devoted to the information freedom sphere. We wanted to create the Institute of Ombudsman of Information Freedom and a lot of other things, but because of different reasons they were not confirmed. And you said that some things were adopted, but they are all shelved and dusted. In this respect, is our country entitled to some kind of sanctions? Not only us, all NGOs are asking these questions at all summits. They say, we talk and talk and talk, and our government doesn't do this and doesn't do that, and the other government doesn't do this and that. But still there are no sanctions. There have been precedents of, say, in case of common complaints, our neighbors, Azerbaijan and Turkey, both of their actions were halted because, in general, they did not cooperate in their action plan development with the civic society. They were not transparent in general, absolutely. And the result of this constant monitoring is going to be this. But sanctions are not definite yet. I think they themselves don't know what to do. Only in very evident cases, like in Azerbaijan case, it was obvious. It was evident, this gap between the NGOs and the government, and there was no connection at all. And however, all the sides, social partners, were to be involved equally. Okay, taking chance of this advantage, this new information about information freedom. Very briefly, what dangers, are waiting for us? You will see my comments in the media. I think we shall reach to the point that we would stop it and won't touch the acting law. We hope, and we are we have optimistic, no, not optimistic, we are just strongly inclined to stop this process, because we see that the trends are going backwards from the side of the government. I hope, and that is the law of everybody, please read the law, please read the draft and the process, because with the law on information freedom we can protect all our rights. The simplest example, for example, when I go to a passport bureau and I want to take a passport for my child, I previously ask the head of the department, please tell me what documents do I need. I receive the answer and then go. First I went there without that answer. They told me, you need this paper. I know that I don't need that paper. Well, I went, however, I took the paper and gave them this paper. But when you, and they did my case, but when you go to different levels of social services, this is a way of protecting all our rights, and we must not allow any backward movements. Thank you, Liana, a wonderful possibility for our citizens. Now I want to invite the moderators of our next session, next workshop moderators, to introduce and discuss our rights and responsibilities regarding personal data. Moderators will conduct the workshop in 2 languages, so be patient if you have delays in translation. And so Ceren Unal and Gevor Kairapetyan. Protection of personal data. Ceren, that you said my name correctly. I hope you are going to stop me with your comments and with the well, kind of instruction. Well, turns out that now we are not many, and I ask all the audience to interrupt whenever you want. Please raise your hands. Who's in Facebook? Wow. Now one more question. Who has read the conditions till the end? Till the last line. I knew it. Thank you very much. So the rest I have not read, by the way, myself. So that is the about so we are going to speak about protection of personal data, and that was not an incidental question that I asked, because the right of protection of personal data is everything that is connected with us, with our life. Actually, we must be the pioneers, those who are the first who are implementing the right of self-protection of our data. So, the law on protection of personal data has entered into force in 2015, but since 2008 we had a law on personal data. Simply that law had declarative character. It did not have implementation, enactments, and certain things were not defined well. And this law that was adopted in 2015 gives us all the necessary tools in order to protect data, and at the same time, as an authorized body, was created this agency of data protection, and it started telling people about how to protect personal data. It started telling people, and people started to be interested, to apply to us with different complaints, with different issues. But when the law was newly adopted and we made a survey, wanted to know to what extent people are aware of the law, whether they're interested about the protection of their personal data, more than 40%, around 60% of people did not know at all, were not aware that there are personal data around them. Even there might be some video recordings about them, which they are not aware even. Well, I'm not going to use a lot of terminology. The law on protection of personal data, with several concepts, gave a definition of what are the data, personal data. Personal data is everything with which a person can be identified, directly or indirectly. Like, for example, my picture is a personal data, because if you were given my pictures, my photos, or your pictures was given to me, that would become a personal data. And without recognizing any of you, with the picture, I would immediately see, understand, recognize who was there in the picture. There are cases when the personal data are indirectly providing means for identification. Like, for example, the codes or the numbers of your car. Is it a personal data? Yes, you're absolutely right. If it is registered, these 5 figures plus 2 letters are not personal data. But when they are placed on your car, and for example, they are placed on the technical passport, and it is possible to identify the person, whether he or she is the owner of this car. From that very moment, this data becomes personal, because indirectly this is allowing, together with other data, to identify the person. At the same time, the law, revealed types of data which deserve more attention. Like, for example, data on the personal life of a person: physical, physiological, mental, marital, whatever other. Look, family and private life are the same? How do you think? Family life and personal, right, but say private life, are they the same things? No, put aside the Facebook. Look here, let's assume I am married. I have 2 children, and it is written in my biography, in my CV. Can my wife say, why have you revealed this secret that you are married? Well, Armenian woman would be happy, you say, like, for example, that is our own business, yes, mine and my wife's, sorry. They don't write in the passport, but I decide that I'm going to write it, and I write it. They do write sometimes, by the way, indeed. They do write in the passport the marital status, whatever, they do. So people, look here. These are data pertinent as to me, as to my wife, because we have married together. What if I have a mistress, somebody an affair. That would be only mine. All right, let's assume that it is something acceptable in Armenia. The private life, personal life, assumes that a person can have, say, kind of desire or rights that this information about his private personal life could be private. There are two more data that, according to our legislation, they are biometric. But in Europe, these kind of data are, they call them sensitive personal data. What is the meaning of this? That they need more protection rather than the other data. Like, for example, do we need to protect our name and family name? No. After all, we are social beasts. From the first day of our birth, we are socializing with people, and we give our name and second name to people in order to be able to communicate. But there are data, like, why should everybody know about this? Like, there is a category in personal data. Look at the last one on this slide, the last data. So information about your sexual life. It's not that, well, yes, when I get acquainted with somebody, I tell my name and second name, but I don't say anything about my sexual life in general to anybody. Look here. If you look at the personal data of special category, you see racial belonging, ethnic origin, political views, this kind of information. Don't you think anything? Why are they considered to be special category private life? Don't you say? You don't say. I know that you know. You don't say, please. You don't say either. I know that you know because we have spoken. In order to for exclusion of discrimination, in general terms, if anybody wants this data, there is a doubt that indeed a person can be say subjected to discrimination. So these data should be very justified, the processing of this data. Till recent times, it was used to ask in our labor contracts not only the nationality but also national belonging. When they ask, you say, why? Why should I say? How does it matter? Look here, there is one more type of personal data, like popular, but that's not a type of data actually. It's not like of one category and the popular one is a different type. There is something like that. Which are the popular? Name, second name, date of birth, date of death, place of birth. Theoretically could be some biometric data as well, or even special category can also be popular. And now we're coming back to our main topic, when we would come out of the law of the protection of personal data and come back to internet. So what was the special category? I didn't say about sexual life. Yes, if with my aware activities I make available this information to certain number of people, this would become popular, and I would lose the mechanisms of protecting this data, which means that it depends on my decision actually. Yes. Now look here, if I'm not mistaken, you said we should not have such an attitude to the internet as a special sphere of regulation. Working in the agency of protection of personal data, to big extent, say the internet, or they became secondary. They do have characteristics that can impact on the content and that are to be regulated. But actually, isn't it the same where the personal data is written? Because if it is to be protected, then it is to be protected. If it is to be classified, then it is to be classified. Imagine my personal data are written not here, but in a cuneiform letters on a tablet of the size of this table. Well, it would be difficult to physically move it from here to there, but that would be the only characteristic. But the content would be exactly my personal data that is in cuneiform on the tablet, stone tablet. Well, everything is different. What if it is on paper? Well, that one that is on the paper has its specifics, but if I had to pass it to somebody, then I would go to the post, and with special mail I would send to somebody if I want to pass it. But that stone tablet would stay forever. And what about the paper? The paper would vanish sooner or later. Yes? Years ago, these grantees were making nice sunflower seeds, and all these papers were used for packaging. Well, now what is the characteristic of the internet? This is my personal data. People read it, then they forgot about it, and that's it. So a lot of personal data are just there. As soon as they want to find it, remember it, they look in Google and it comes back. And we shall come back to the right of being forgotten. And these are the characteristics of the internet. And this is, well, you know, the internet in the reality can't be regulated. You have to regulate the content. They say you have to regulate the internet because there is a lot of hatred speech, but you have to regulate the hatred speech, what was done in by the European court. Doesn't matter whether you curse it or say offensive words in a square of the city or in the internet, all the same, they are to be banished. And the second important question comes. Internet is developing very quickly, and the IT people, specialists of IT security and technologies, are smart. They create everything so quickly that we don't manage to reach them, like the lawyers. They are always lagging behind. Very long ago, Warner Brothers sued Sony for what? You remember? For producing the video recorders. They said, wow, what are you doing? What about my movie theaters? Copyright, intellectual property right. And the courts in America said, you can't stop technological development. Indeed, the law is always lagging behind. And now everything is going on even more quickly. I had assumed to speak about three things: publication of personal data by state, by internet, by media, and the right to be forgotten, and the publication of personal data by the person itself. That's why I stopped in the beginning much on the popular data, because anybody can publish anything about him herself and then have a lot of headache. There's one YouTube video, but it has continuation. If I had to write the continuation, everybody would immediately understand what I'm speaking about. But I don't want you to concretely understand what I'm speaking about. This story is about a girl, 15-year-old girl, who had made a confession to his boyfriend. Look. Oh, why didn't the police start a case for publishing the data on personal life? Because the publisher was the boy to whom the confession was addressed. And secondly, they both were the owners of this video material. How could this girl know what she was doing? Now look how many levels of her personal life have been infringed, violated, brought into something condemnable, reproachable. Well, firstly, she could simply tell about her feelings, about that episode of her private life. Constitutionally, they say the secrecy of private life is mainly about feelings. Yes, she could say she didn't. She decided to shoot herself. She did it, and she did then the second step. She sent it to somebody else. Just gave this to somebody else, and this other person, who became the owner of this material, published it. Actually, this girl made herself popular. Herself, yes. But if we were to look these two persons as one body, they made their personal family life something popular. So how are you going to protect it? Are you thinking, or you want to say something? Գևորգ կներեք ձեզ ընդհատելու համար I know Gera knows our practice, because we have a guidebook about children security on page 14 about the personal data of children, because well, of course they are not aware of the threats to their personal private life, but that could be true also about the adults, unfortunately. So screenshot hasn't taken all this. Like, for example, when you are making a picture not decent, when you are having fun, think thrice before publishing it. And if there are other people next to you, take care of them, so deal with them the same you would like them to deal with you, and don't publish their indecent pictures either. And I am really thankful to you for using this term of staying alone, because when I alone in my room, I'm writing something in my computer that, yeah, I'm so sad because I'm so alone in this sad blue autumn evening. I'm not alone at all, because I'm reading this to the whole world, and all over me people are reading about what I'm writing. You remember there was a case in Armenia, again in social networks, when an Armenian girl, a woman, and her black French husband and their child, they published their family picture. Actually, there was no legal dispute, because in the course of the case, the picture was taken away from the site, because that photo studio that had made the picture immediately understood what they are dealing with. They immediately stopped the further publication of the data of that girl. But that was a good case for us to basing on European right, basing on this Working Party 29, which is the directive. Whatever, European standards. We found European standards and our standards from our laws, and we said yes, the consent is to be aware, is to be specifically expressed, that is specifically speaking of the consent. It should be well, direct, well, exactly, so is repeating that people should be informed, and they should understand the results or consequences of the consent that they have given. What I said, it shouldn't be general, it should be given specifically. Well, whatever. You know, in some countries this is yes and that is no. Sometimes people would ask me, they ask something, they say, what was that? Was that yes or no? That can't be considered as a consent. It was more like yes than no, or it was more like no than yes. So the consent should be given specifically. You can't give it general, like, Georg, do you mind if we publish your personal data? And I say, yeah, no, I don't mind. And they start publishing my data, and then they say, you gave the consent, which actually I did not. And in our law, there are such criteria that when receiving the consent, the side that is receiving the consent should explain, the person who is given the consent, about a lot of details on why is he asking for the consent, what is he going to do with this data, on what conditions, terms, when, where, all 8 points, all in all, that the consent is to be informed. This has also technical issue. Might be that the person is very, very careful, cautious about his data, but she doesn't know what to do to protect his data. There was a movie, husband and wife, in order to make their personal life, they decide to record their night adventures. And because of the interconnected devices, the whole recording is disseminating automatically all over the world. And the whole movie is about how this couple is having a lot of problems and adventures while collecting back from all their social environment, this movie, hoping that people might have not yet watched it, that indecent part of the video. Another case was this case of Hello, and there were two guides: how to apply to Facebook to remove personal data, or how to make personal data more protected in Google and other places. I want to tell you two cases on private life. In Germany, a 12-year-old girl had made a suicide. The parents applied to Facebook asking for access to her account in order to reveal the reasons of the suicide, and Facebook has answered, no way. If your daughter has not allowed you, then you have no access. If the law enforcement bodies would allow or would ask, then I will give the information, but you are not, you have nothing to say. Did this 12-year-old girl have right to have account in Facebook? Well, according to Facebook rules, no. Maybe the Facebook relations, our Facebook relations, according to our Armenian legislation, these are social services, you know. The Facebook actually is not free of charge. Well, it is free of charge. We don't pay, but they, if we are opening an account, they are making a lot of money. Well, according to our legislation, this is civic legal relation. Facebook, of course, doesn't allow anybody to enter to Facebook and have an account, but taking into account the essence of a person, people, well, cheat. They used to cheat. In some European countries, they have such a rule. They forbid this, and the responsibility is parents that to a certain age, children should not have accounts or profiles in social networks. And when the child acquires this right, he acquires also this package of privacy with which they manage to, they can say to parents, you can't touch my account because that is my private life. Now, that is the operating rule, but again, this is not the matter of interference of the state. Internet can't be regulated, and the state can't see whoever where has cheated or not. This is more the problem of raising the awareness level. Like, for example, the agency is now doing trainings for personal data protection for adolescents or teenagers of age from 12 to 14. People understand it with great difficulty. I personally don't understand it easily. And what about the child, that if you are happy and you are placing a photo, 10 years later this might have an impact on you? Well, I have started watching at my certain pictures in the social network. Well, not like I'm a young man and this, why shouldn't it be there? But then I think, well, this picture is going to be there when I'm gone, and my grandchildren will have their grandchildren. The idea is like, if you explain it this way, if you explain about the bad or harming or information that is acting remotely and possibly many years ago, of course there is such danger. Like, for example, celebrities, stars. Most importantly, this should be aware decision. Conscious decision. Okay, so Thank you very much. If we are disseminating our pictures in social networks like in Facebook, and this means that actually we are losing our rights in respect of that picture, and it could be freely disseminated in the internet. Doesn't mean that if somebody takes these pictures and opens a Facebook page account using your pictures with other name and second name, it doesn't mean that this person is free of any social responsibility. Or actually, you are speaking about the identity theft, yes? When your identity is stolen by somebody else. No, you are not losing your right in respect of your photo. You are simply losing the mechanisms of protecting your picture, because you are not disseminating it among your narrow circle of associates, friends, neighbors, and you can't just go take it away. You are sending it to the whole world. 2 billion Chinese, Siberia, America, I don't know, whoever enters internet. Imagine what instrument should give your state, be it sovereign, small, so as you would be able to take it back from everybody's computers. Now currently, for example, Facebook tries to do something like that the pictures won't be possible to won't be saved by ślawe, bądźmy go kanadcie. Look, we have two options for writing the laws. One general and one more, because this is one of the characteristics of our country. Okay, let me say it this way. Somebody from my department is studying the GDPR so as to include all of these challenges into the package of our law if there is need. And not all the challenges we can address or prevent in the framework of the law. It assumes that a lot of changes are to be there. What? I want to think about what you said, that whether this has happened or can be in Armenia and can't, because 2 years is not much for revealing all challenges. Do you have a question? 2 years ago, I'm saying something short. 2 years ago, when I participated at this conference, maybe the first conference, you were discussing the issue of elections AM. But it is still there. We have not given permission, unlike was said by Annie. We didn't place our photo. And about the SMSs, for advertising. 2 years have passed. Is there any movement for elections AM? Who has given the permission? Me, you, Ani? Exactly. On all of us, on all of our behalves, for our sake and for us. Exactly. We have chosen one very important, for protection of something else. In the face of the National Assembly, we have decided that these data are to be published according to the law. The right of protection of personal data is not an absolute law, it is balanced law. Sometimes we are forced to give consent, or sometimes we have no other way out. Well, if sometimes the state gives this consent on our behalf in the form of a law, and that is a consent. Who is receiving pensions among you? Raise your hands. Who is receiving pension? Well, like retirement pension. That's what I meant. Nobody says. All right, okay. Let's suppose I am receiving retirement pension. It means that I give some part of my personal data. I tell them who am I, how old I am, where I have worked, what I have done in order to receive this pension. Yes? The specifics of processing personal data on state bodies doesn't have only one ground. Personal data processing has also another ground, which if it is stipulated by the law. When I said that all of you have given consent, I wanted to say that the law that has been written, that is our law, written on our behalf with our consent. But if we were to look at this very from, say, grassroots, by law, they don't ask consent from individuals. We have around 400 officials who are now giving statements on how much they make, what do they have, all about themselves, about their social life. They give information. Nobody has asked anybody. The law forces them to give this information. Same is about elections AM. Look, in elections AM, and that is a political issue, by the way, but if we were to look at it technically, in elections AM, the personal data are being published because it is written in our election code that it is to be so. It is written in the law that, do you know that even the signed lists are being published? That's what we are saying about. Okay, let me tell you this. The Agency of Protection of Personal Data had administrative case against the central election committee, and they complained against us, and we are now in the process of litigation. We are in the process of litigation. We have considered that as much as possible the personal data should not be published. But if in the law it is stipulated that this or that personal data is to be published, regardless whether we think that it is good or bad that our signatures have been published, regardless of this, if the majority of the society has decided that it must be published, that is to be published, because the law adopted by the majority is also the law of the minority that was against it, and that is a danger. We give so as it would be possible to make decision on the basis of this data about the decent elections, about the possibility of having control and so on. Let's do it this way. Let's assume every person can control. It means I can control. I go and see whether my signature has been forged or not, whatever. Now let's look from the other side. This personal data can be published for receiving a more important value for us. So as we would receive fair elections and just authorities. It doesn't mean that it is justified that somebody can take my signature, put it on some identity card and go receive so money on my behalf. Well, anyway, this is illegal if this is used for so criminal purposes, for illegal purposes. How should I say? When people who have learned a law by old books, they know that each law has its load. The law on protection of personal data has its load. The criminal code has its load. The election code has its load. If Elections AM says you have to publish, people should be able to download it, to look at it, to decide whether it was good or bad, fair or not fair. So the violations of this are not the load of the election code. It's not their load to consider responsibility for misusing this, but that responsibility is stipulated by the criminal code. You apply to prosecutor's office, not the court, or you apply to the agency of personal data protection if there is no criminal case. Okay, let's speak of the principle of proportionality. If personal data is developed, is worked out on the basis of the law, the misuse of the goal brings to the violation of this law. What other purpose? Okay, I'm going to ask a very important, interesting question, because you are now discussing. We have Armenia's law on personal data protection, and we have Facebook, yes, which has its own regulations. What's going on if there is contradiction between two of them? Our law on protection of personal data, they call it a blanket law. It neither prohibits nor allows to develop or to work, to use, process any data. It just says, do it with consent. Do it with if it is from popular source. Don't use it. Don't distort it. Don't misuse it. And the consent and the forms of consents are given very widely. It could be both written and oral. It is the consent, for example, when it is in the agreement. When you have pushed the accept button, it is an agreement. In case of Facebook, it is an agreement. So according to our law, the Facebook activity or anybody else's activity based on contractual basis, impossible to contradict to our law. It is very easy to violate the law on protection of personal data, but it is very difficult to contradict to it, because it doesn't say anything forbidding or doesn't say that this must be this way. They say that agreement, consent could be oral, and that could be not only verbal, but with actions that you prove that you have given the consent. So I stand before the camera, I do this, and it means that I give consent. If there is a contradiction, like for example, Zuckerberg takes my data and uses it for absolutely different purposes, like he starts to say meme me, he starts to mock me with my picture, I would be able, in the framework of our legislation, tell that yes, he has violated Armenia's legislation. But in some European countries, it is easy to reach to these relations. They know whom they can arrest. When in France, in Spain, they developed this right of being forgotten, that was because in Spain they had the Google office, they had Facebook country representatives, and in Armenia it's like, theoretically, because we don't have these links and there are no such technical possibilities, if there is no office, could be that theoretically, yes, the right is infringed, but I have no technical means for, say, starting a case against it. Well, it depends also the relations between the two countries, and in the case of GDPR, I think GDPR said that if any country is processing personal data yes, GDPR has made the internal legislation applicable for everybody. A small rhetoric might even sound foolish. Then why do we need the social networks? We understand very well that all the information that I put there on my Facebook page, that's my decision to place it there or not to place it there, knowing that that has become already public. But in that case, the social networks are losing their informative, communicative part, like maybe something we need, we desire, we need this socializing, we need to be visible. This is kind of exhibitionistic some actions. So why then the Facebook? Well, that was not a rhetoric question. It's a concrete question, and it has very concrete answer. Like in the morning when you were watching the video, when in the course of survey people were saying, I'm collecting information, I'm collecting information. This is about awareness. If you know what are you disseminating, that's great, but nobody says that. I mainly use it for getting information and giving information about me. Nobody said that they won't use it for disseminating information about them. Nobody said that I'm disseminating information about yesterday being at this or that cafe. I have checked in, or how I was sitting there, what was my mood, feeling what, feeling this, feeling that. Huh? Nobody said that I'm doing this to disseminate information about me. Exactly. They don't know that actually they are disseminating information about themselves. Well, if you know and you do it conscientiously, well, a boy named Max in Australia had applied to Facebook and asked his history Facebook page. How many pages were given to him? 1,200 pages. The freshest example, the most recent example, the Guardian's reporter had applied to Tinder, I think. There is some kind of social network like that. And they said, give me my history. They sent 800 pages, including 1,700 messages that he had written. Also, all the Instagram likes of what other guys' pictures did he like. If I, knowing all of this and disseminating information about me, then why not? I'm doing well. Well, that's my business. But exactly, the social network is for that. But now, after I know about this, maybe I will change my mind. I will decide that I'm not disseminating any more information. The whole issue is that any case should be conscientious. Well, I'm going to tell you 2 cases, and that is the end of, because with this I will bring to balance all the issues that we were touching here. I'm going to tell 2 additional cases, or not. Just a minute, somebody wants to say something. Okay. This world that way, social networks are there in our life, and I think that indeed they are giving possibility for socializing, and they have a lot of opportunities as well. Well, this way or that way, what is the, how to say, maximum, minimum, golden medium that would tell us this is, if you keep this way, you would? Well, the middle is the harm test. Is the harm test, that is to say, whether with dissemination of information there will be more damage, or there will be more damage if the information is not disseminated. That is a question that can be issued from case to case, only changing one component. Well, I'm bringing 2 stories, one about the boy, one about the girl, and then you will ask me about 2 boys. This case was this. Shamshan placed a story that 2 boys wanted to commit suicides, and they were children. The names were there, the pictures were there, the institution they were in there. The whole essence was that these children wanted to commit suicide, and he was elucidating the actions of these institutions, how they work with the children, how they try to rehabilitate them. Now, forever this information was placed in the internet, and it was going to stay in the internet. These boys were going to grow up, and that would harm them. And we said, take out the pictures. They took out the pictures, they took out the names, left only the letters. Let's change the time only. Let's go back. Let it be the children didn't want to make a suicide, to commit a suicide, but it would be these children want to commit a suicide. People, come, save them. And so that was a matter of curiosity, yes? Stirring up the curiosity, not calling for help or assistance. That was the case. And here we were dealing with the lives of 2 children. Was it worth giving information about these children in order to save their lives? Well, yes, for the case of saving, for the sake of saving their lives, it was worth giving this information. And what I missed, the circle of dangers, is that information was going to stay in there forever, would be available to everybody, and would just put a stigma on their future lives. Take into consideration 3 criteria if you are disseminating information about yourself. Would you like this information to be disseminated about you when you are disseminating it about somebody else? Would you like, would this come back and impact negatively your life? Naturally, if you are disseminating information about somebody else, there is also this feedback condition that this person can, for example, object against this, and you should take into account his or her opinion. The other case now, not always. Well, I miss the remarks and comments. They don't say it in the microphone. Well, information, the positive information, as a matter of fact, is never problematic when you are giving positively, because besides the identity theft, I would say that there are no dangers. Yes, indeed, there could be dangers, especially some for our society where, yeah, dangers are always there. But if I would say, then you would say you are exaggerating. Possible to, for example, create information. I was watching a movie yesterday. It was a TV series. Yeah, Criminal Minds, a new series. New season has started yesterday, by the way. This is about criminalistics, about profiling criminals and people. And there was a criminal. As a matter of fact, and as a rule, they are always serial killers or some kind of serial crime makers, and they have some their favorite types of victims, theoretically. Well, God save us. In a city, a maniac, a pedophile, whatever, is... what? You mean the Sharon Stone head was cut? Whatever. Well, that was a... Well, this person is hunting children, blonde children, and hunting through their photos. And what should I do? Should I just take care of? Well, the danger is always there, you know. But in other equal conditions, there is no danger, there are no maniacs, we live in an ideal society. Why shouldn't I place my child's picture while playing violin? But for the speaker, nobody speaks into the microphone, so I can't translate anybody. I think one of the solutions is that we should simply raise the level of awareness, so as people would understand that any action in the internet, in the Facebook, placing any picture, status, posts, whatever, first it stays in the internet, and what could be the consequences, and after that, that would be the right of this person whether to do it or not to do it. So the issue is educating people, raising the level of awareness, and with that we would minimize the risks. Company. No. We're speaking about protection of personal data. According to our constitution, individual is about legal entities. So the question is, can we say that this is covering the data of... No, legal entities do not have personal data. No, when we say entity, we also mean legal entity. But in this case, we are speaking about physical entity. So whatever we speak is only about physical entity, personal data or physical entity. And how is the legal entity to protect itself? Well, there are a lot of mechanisms. According to the civic code, at least there is the mechanism of protection of reputation, for which there are, I don't know, 1,008 articles, something. Yeah. And there are also sanctions. Let me. Well, I don't want to say because I don't remember well, but the mechanism of protecting the data on legal entity exists. There are, and legal entities can protect themselves with this law. And at the end, I want to say that another example. I want to say that that's an interesting example. Would you like to tell me or not? Well, people ask. The story of a girl shows that sometimes not the reporters, but the state sometimes forgets about certain circumstances in certain legal acts. Like, for example, according to our legislation, there are certain cases which are done with closed doors. Like, for example, information on say wrong witnessing. A girl cheated the enforcing entities, saying that she was raped. All right, let's assume that there was no problem. She has simply cheated. nobody's raped her. But then it was revealed that there was no rape, but there was something. And the case wasn't closed, it was open case, and the sides did not take care of closing the... Well, she went to... she went and had a night with a boy, and then decided that she didn't like it and that he raped her, and went and cheated, deceived that she was raped. So the sides did not demand closure of the case, and the life of this girl was on Datalex's side. Why? Because I, as a lawyer, am allowed to enter that site to take cases that could become precedents for my cases, for my other jobs. Look, in Armenia, the laws are not self-sufficient. They become holistic by the comments, by the implementation, by the interpretation of the courts. So the Datalex used that case. Then one media outlet found this information and published this information with the name of the girl, with her address, all the other information. Well, from the point of view of a reporter, he did it well. It's a different case. Why? What was the purpose of doing this? We warned them, this media, the information was taken out. We warned that the name of the communities to be taken out. But then turned out the following, that in a publicly tried case, the information about this girl was publicly placed, and a lot of vandals were, in a sense, directed to her address and to her name. So, new challenges, not taking into account the possibilities of the Facebook or internet, better say, might bring to this kind of problems. Like, for example, we are now in the process of deciding that, like, cases on juvenile delinquency, if they are going to be published, they must be published without personal data. Like you can use it for precedence, but you won't be able to make the data of the person to see who was this person. See, that is the case of reaching balance. I want to say that we spoke about the right of being forgotten. I want to say that even this is a balanceable law. The base is in Spain. There was a person in Spain who had some tax liabilities, and there was an article written about him. 10 years have passed. Costejaria was his name, and he said, when my name, people choose my name, it always brings that I have some tax liabilities, but that was so long ago, and I am explaining to everybody that this is an old data and it is still harming me. And so he had applied to the court, European court, and the court has said the Google should make this data unavailable about this person. It is called also the name of the right of the virtual death. This is about disasters, wars, victims of wars, so as the state should remind about this, so as nobody would forget about this, in order to be able to prevent this. So this is the right on reminder. One more case, story from Armenia. We had a talk show which is called Half-Opened Windows. The talk show can't be discussed. That is a wonderful case of media. It was formed in America. Oprah Winfrey was one of the beginners of then Donahue, and I don't remember who have created this genre. Well, in any case, it has a huge social potential. It is revealing problems of the society, alcoholism, drug abuse, a lot of other social abuses. But let's plus to this genre also the low level of awareness of the society about their rights. So somebody comes to the program anticipating some support, goes back and understands that all his life has been told to all over the world, and people would come and say, take off this program from YouTube. We said we can't do it, but we applied to the media and suggested people sometimes can be wrong, and they have right to be forgotten. And we gave them criteria. It's not like everybody comes and says, take out information about me, you have to take it out. There should be proven negative impact, so as nobody could manipulate with the media outlet. Besides this negative impact, there should be also, say, a lack of urgency. It should be like 10 years have passed, but nevertheless it continues having negative impact, poisoning the life of the person. And the third criteria, there is to be component of disposability. Like person decides, him herself, to protect his right or not. Maybe this is Lady Gaga and says, wow, I want this information about me, because as a celebrity, as a pop star, I want to do some promotion on these contradictions. But somebody else could say, no, this impacting me is harming, damaging my reputation, I want it out, I don't want it to be there. So we suggest to the media, if a person would apply, would justify that this is poisoning his or her life, and if there is no urgency, that is to say, from your point of from the point of view of our mission, you doesn't care, discuss the possibility of taking it out. Wow, thank you very much. Շատ շնորհակալ եմ, Գևորգ, interesting. Turns out that the topics of personal lives of individuals is very interesting. Next time we shall sequester more time for this. As long as this was the last workshop session, I want to invite the representatives of our sponsoring organizations for some wrapping up speeches. Let's do some wrap up of the whole working day. Jeran, please stay. I want to invite Vahan Ovsepian, Raiben CC's representative, Grigor Sakyan, Internet Governance Commission Secretary, Yana Israelan, Digital Report, our media partner, and Kulikova is not present. Oh no, there she is. Alexandra, would you please join? And Alexandra Kulikova, representative of ICANN organization. I'm inviting you for a quick wrap-up session. Arten van Sörte Karotet. Thank you. As you know, RIPE NCC gives high importance to this kind of events, and IGF is one of those most important events which are being appreciated not only by us but also by all the starlet organizations, ICANN, ISOC, and I'm proud to be part of RIPE NCC, ISOC, and ICANN as an ICANN fellow. We are going to support these events continuously. Internet governance is everybody's job, and I believe that all of us, we should participate in it, and we should involve the younger generation, because they have their place, they have their position, and they have to say their word. So as the internet governance would be multi-stakeholder, so as we would understand what are we governing and what we want to achieve. Thank you organizers, thank you partners, and thank you donors and sponsors. With your permission, I'm representing the magazine Digital Report. This is a magazine that's writing everything about internet, and we are elucidating on everything that is going on the whole post-Soviet space, and I'm responsible for Caucasus. Already for the second year, we are partner of Armenian Forum of Internet Governance, and we were partner of Georgian Internet Governance. I have to say that I had great pleasure seeing how the level is raising, how the format of this format of meetings is developing so rapidly. It was last year this time, if I'm not mistaken, plus minus a day, I think, last year. And besides the fact that we are meeting once a year, we are also following what's going on in the course of the year. Actually, I remember that when our magazine was entering this market, I was horrified. What am I going to write about this? Because most probably nothing interesting is happening in such small countries. But now I understand that it's not only a lot of interesting things are happening, but they are so active, that life is so interesting and more active, dynamic year after year, that now I have to choose prioritize which topics are more important, about which I would write with greater pleasure, and I'm doing this with absolute pleasure. And this is the case when the smaller countries can express themselves regardless of their physical size, and can, yes, they can declare about themselves on the global map of information technologies. I hope that in next year the Georgian and the Armenian forums and our region will be represented really very, very decently, very, very well on the whole global map. Thank you. Thank you all organizers. Շատ շնորհակալ